In this chapter, we'll explore arrays and loops. An array is simply a way of storing multiple values in a single variable, and a loop allows you to get to each individual value in turn. This chapter lays the foundation for working with online forms and displaying database results later in the course. So, how do you create an array? Well, let's begin by creating a PHP block above the doc type. You store an array in an ordinary variable, so in keeping with the floral theme of the Hansel and Petal website that we've been using in the course, let's create an array called flowers. Then the equals sign, and there are two ways to create an array. The original way is to use the array keyword and then a pair of parentheses after that, and between the parentheses you create a comma-separated list of all the items that you want in the array. You can put anything in an array. You can put numbers, you can put strings, you can put other things. You can even put other arrays inside an array. I'm going to use just strings, and we're going to have a list of various flowers. So they need to be separated by commas. Let's have some tulips, followed by a comma. Then the next array item will be roses. Then we'll have some daffodils. Maybe go upmarket a bit with some orchids. And then everyone's favourite, some daisies. And then, of course, after the closing parenthesis, we need a semicolon to end that statement. And that's how you create an array. There is a new way of creating an array, which was being introduced in PHP 5.4, and it's been adopted from JavaScript. So let me just copy this and paste it down here. We'll give it a new name. We'll call it flowers2. And instead of using the array keyword and parentheses, you just use square brackets. So if I delete array and replace that with a square bracket and then put a square bracket at the end, that is the new shorthand way of creating an array. It works only in PHP 5.4 and later. And you might have noticed that Dreamweaver is telling me I've got a syntax error on line 3. The reason for that is that I'm using Dreamweaver CS6, which knows about the syntax for PHP 5.3 and earlier, but it doesn't understand the 5.4 syntax. So it's a useful reminder that this shorthand syntax works only in the latest versions of PHP. Because this shorthand doesn't work on all servers, throughout the rest of the course I'm going to use the original version with the array keyword and parentheses. But if you are using a more up-to-date version of PHP, then of course you can use this shorthand version. And incidentally, Dreamweaver CC has been updated so that it does understand the syntax of PHP 5.4, so you wouldn't get a syntax error if you were using that as your editor. If you want to add extra elements to an array, the easy way to do so is to add an empty pair of square brackets after the variable name and assign a new value. So let's add a new value to our original flowers array. So flowers and then an empty pair of square brackets, the equals sign, and then the value, which will be irises. And that's the way that you add an extra item at the end of an array. And this also works exactly the same if you're using the shorthand version. So I could add the same value to the flowers2 array. So just the empty pair of square brackets and then add that string at the end, irises. So that's how you create an array. There are two ways in which to do it. One is to use the traditional way, which is with the array keyword and a pair of parentheses. Between the parentheses, add a comma-separated list of the array elements. The shorthand way to do it is to use a pair of square brackets, but this is supported only in PHP 5.4 or later. So now you know how to create an array. The next step is to use their contents in a practical way. Arrays are widely used in PHP. The input from a form is stored as an array, and each row of a database search result is an array. In the file that I've got open here, the array elements are hard-coded above the doc type, but you often don't know in advance what an array contains or how it's structured. Thankfully, PHP has a built-in function that lets you examine the contents and structure of an array. It's an essential tool used in testing, and it helps explain how PHP sees arrays internally, making it easier for you to understand how to get the information you want. To display the contents of an array, you pass the array variable as an argument to a function called print_r. And so what I'm going to do is, in the body of this page, I'm going to add a couple of pre-tags. Adding the pre-tags makes it easier to see the output of print_r in a browser. And between those pre-tags, I'm going to add my PHP block. And then between there will be print_r, and the argument will be the name of the array, which is flowers. So I'll save that page, then go to my browser, and we need to load that. It's localhost /exercises, and we're in chapter 04 and 04_02, and the name was examine array. And there we are. That is the array. Let me just zoom in a little so you can see it better. This displays the contents of the array, and each element has a number on the left in square brackets, and the value is displayed after the double arrow on the right. The numbers are generated automatically by PHP, and like arrays in JavaScript, the numbering begins at 0. The value in square brackets is known as the element's key or index, and you can use this key to access the element you want. So let's say we want to get orchids. Now the point is that orchids is the 4th element, but its number is 3. Its key or index is 3. So let's go back to our editor, and we will add another little paragraph down here, and then some PHP, and we will use echo, and so it'll be flowers, and then a square bracket, and then that index number, which is 3, and our closing PHP tag. And let's be very good with our HTML. We'll close the P tag as well. Save that, go back to the browser, reload it, and there it is. We've displayed the value of the 4th element. Although it's the 4th element, the index is 3. Now, if you add or remove elements, the numbers are regenerated. Similarly, they'll change if you sort the array. So flowers with brackets 3 won't necessarily always be orchids, but most of the time you don't really need to know the number of an element in an array, but in some cases it can be extremely useful. Later in this course you'll extract the color of an image from its file name by breaking the name into an array and selecting the 3rd element. So let's summarize what we've seen in this lesson. The print_r function is a useful tool for examining the structure and contents of an array. In this example, we used it to examine a simple array called flowers and saw that each array element is identified by a number, which is known as the element's key or index. As in JavaScript, the numbering begins at 0. So the key of the first element is 0, the second element is 1, and so on. To access an array element, use the array variable followed by its key in square brackets. And although print_r is useful for examining arrays, it's of no value in a live web page, but you might find that it helps solve the upcoming challenge. In the previous chapter, we used the date function to get the first 3 letters of the current month's name. The code's there on line 2 in index.php in the Hansel and Petal site, and we used it to display an image of the month. However, if we go down to where that image is in the HTML, there it is down here, we can see that the alternate text is still hard-coded and it says fresh tulips. Armed with the knowledge you've gained about arrays, I'd like you to think about how you might go about changing the alternate text so that it matches the image. Now, to help you, if you go to the h&p_check folder, open that and go to 04_03, in there is a text file called alternate.txt, and that contains some suggested alternate text for each month. There are actually quite a few ways you could do this. The challenge isn't to find the most sophisticated approach. All you need is something that works. take a look at the online documentation for the date function. Take a look at the formatting characters and see if you can find something that might help you select an element according to its position in an array. And don't forget that array elements are numbered from 0. This shouldn't take you more than about 10-15 minutes. In the next video, I'll show you how I did it. This is how I solved the challenge of inserting the correct alternate text for the image of the month. When we displayed the image in the previous chapter, we used the first 3 letters of the month's name, which were part of the image file name, and the code to do that is on line 2. We used the date function and passed it a format string of uppercase M, which gets the first 3 letters of a month's name. So to solve this particular problem, I went back to the documentation for the date function on the PHP website and scrolled down, looked at the format characters, and in month, lowercase n gives you a numeric representation of a month without leading zeros, 1 through 12. So that's what I decided to use. So back in my editor, I created a new variable called month number and used the date function with a lowercase n as the format string. And then all the text that I'm going to use as the alternate text, I converted into an array. And to save time, I'm going to open that from a text file. You can find the text file in the h&p_check folder, and it's in the 04_04 folder, and it's called specials_alt.txt. And I'm just going to copy that, go back to my editing program and paste it in. I've used the conventional way of creating an array using the array keyword and putting a comma-separated list between a pair of parentheses. Each line is a string and it ends with a comma, so that separates each element. You don't need to format arrays like this, but it's extremely useful when you've got lots of long items in an array. It makes it a lot easier to read and a lot easier to maintain. Now, to work out how to get the correct alternate text into the page, let's first examine what the array contains by using the print_r function, and the array is called specials_alt. So that's the argument that we will pass to print_r, specials_alt, and then just save the page. Now we need to load that into a browser. Create a new tab, and the address is localhost /Hansel and Petal /index.php. Now it's come up above the top of the page. That doesn't really matter. It's purely and simply for testing. It's a bit difficult to read like that, so if we right click and view page source, we can now see it laid out like that. And let me just zoom in a little bit. And we can see that we've got an array, and the first array item is 0, 1, 2, down to 11. Now, months are numbered 1 through 12. There are 2 ways we could deal with this. One is to add a dummy item at the beginning of the array, so January becomes 1. And the other way is simply to do a calculation using PHP. So let's go back to our editor. And we don't want print_r anymore, so let's just comment that out. And then down in the alt text, where is it? There it is, on line 106. So replace fresh tulips with a PHP code block. And in there, we want to echo, and it'll be one of the array elements. So it'll be specials, alt, and then a square bracket after that. And we've got month number as a variable, but month number won't be correct because arrays go from 0, but months go from 1 to 12. So we need to deduct 1 from that month number. So -1, and then the closing square bracket. And we'll finish off with our semicolon, and we will save it. We'll go back to our browser and refresh the page. Now, of course, you can't see the alternate text there, but if I right-click and inspect element, we look down here, there is the alternate text, October special, purple orchids. Problem solved. So let's just look at the code again. There it is. I'm echoing specials alt, which is an array, and it's got 12 elements in it, numbered from 0 to 11. Month number will always be a number between 1 and 12. So I need to deduct 1 from that to be able to get the correct index for the array element that I want. There are several other ways you could have approached this problem, but I chose this one because it's simple and it illustrates how you can change the value of variables on the fly. I've changed the value of month number by just deducting 1 from it. The months always follow in the same order. There are always 12 of them. So getting the month number from the date function was very easy, and all that was necessary was to subtract 1 from its value to get the key for the appropriate array element.